Following the invasion of South Korea by North Korea in the 1950s, the UN has sent 21 countries to contribute to the UN forces, but most of the military units came from America, which consists almost of 90% of the UN forces. And I already explained most of this in my previous videos, but during this time Japan was allowed to develop a small military to counter a possible Soviet invasion. Japan would get a lot of American-made tanks and other military equipment like the M24 Chaffee and the M4A3 ECH Sherman. But Japan would not join in on any military missions in Korea, but would be the biggest base of operations during the Korean War. The small Japanese military set up during this time would eventually become the Japanese Ground Self-Defense Force and was slowly expanded from 1954 until the 1960s. The M4 Shermans and M24 Chafees were pretty much outdated during this time, and they were also considered too large for the average Japanese serviceman. Japan had the option to buy the M47 Panthers and the M41 Walker Bulldogs. They did buy 140 M41 tanks, but eventually decided to develop their own tanks in 1954. The M42 Duster development started during the Korean War when the American Army were phasing out the M24 Chafees and the vehicles using its chassis like the M19 self-propelled anti-aircraft gun. This vehicle would be replaced in favor of an anti-aircraft vehicle that would use the M41 chassis and the M2A1 40mm anti-aircraft guns in a redesigned turret based on the M90. Production of the M42 began in early 1952 and entered service in late 1953. The Duster saw action in the Vietnam War and proved to be really effective against ground targets. Japan got 22 M42 Dusters to replace the M90. It's not known to me when the M42 was phased out of service, but could have been in service until the late 1970s. The M42 Duster was replaced by the Type 87. Development of the Type 87 started in 1978 at the Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, and the turret and cannon systems would be developed by Japanese Steelworks. This new anti-aircraft vehicle would use the Type 61 chassis, but with tanks and vehicle development being extremely slow, a trend coming back for a lot of vehicle development during this time, and watch my Type 74 and Type 10 and Type 90 videos, the decision was made to use the Type 74 chassis over time, and the Type 74 chassis proved to be a lot more suited for carrying the weight of the anti-aircraft designed turret. The turret system would use the two 35mm KDA cannons. These guns are the same used on the German Gepard, and a Doppler radar system with infrared identifiers and a laser rangefinder. And with this specific design turret, the Type 87 would get the nickname Guntech by the Japanese field officers, because it looks similar to the Guntech from Gundam. And you probably need to be an uber weep to see a resemblance, because it's a bit of a far stretch to me. The chassis used for the Type 87 is a modified Type 74 chassis, but would have the same hydrodynamic suspension system as the Type 74, and this suspension would also allow the tank to ride higher and lower depending on the terrain type. The Type 87 began trials in 1982, and the testing of various prototypes started the next year. Testing was done in 1987 and the 87 entered into service the same year. That's why it has the designation status Type 87. When the Type 87 started its development, the jet age just started and many armies didn't find these types of vehicles valuable anymore and stopped all development. in favor of weapon systems like the Hawk SAM missile systems instead. This means that today the Type 87 is inferior against modern attack aircraft, and it has no defense against long-range attacks. But there is talk about trying to update the 87 with modern missile systems based on the Russian 2K22.
Still, the Type 87 is really effective against ground targets, and it can even take out some light and heavy armored vehicles. And that's one reason why it's still in service today. But the effectiveness of this vehicle is questioned because of its unit cost price is pretty high for what it is used for, and that's why only 52 are produced by Japan to this day.
I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm going to do several more of these Japanese vehicle videos up until I'm going to release my first Militrex videos, because Militrex is around the corner and you know what that means. Live streams and a lot of Militrex related videos.